the reason why this is all happening, okay, and what pushed, Maccabi to go live and say and do what he did is literally because they were asking me why I left Islam, and I told them because of, the child marriage, the wife beating, the right hand, whatever your right hand possesses, yada yada yada, things that I personally didn't know had existed, and was just going with the narrative that I was shown and I was taught. Um, so what we're about to watch is literally Mohamed Hijab, who they love. A whole bunch of them were running alive and saying things like, well, I don't know anything about Islam and I need to listen to people like Mohammed Hijab, and they love this guy so much and he's one of the best, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Okay, so let's watch one of your best now. Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
This is going to sound quite scary for you right now, yeah? The reason why it's haram to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old is not found in the Quran whatsoever. It's found in the Sunnah, and in fact.
All right, I just want to stop it early.
That's an L.
Because I want you to hear what he said, okay? I want you to understand that, once again, none of this is made up. He said, if you believe in the Quran only, there is nothing that prohibits you from having sex with a 5-year-old. I'm not going to say anything else he's going to say in this video that goes further to this point, because I want you to watch it in real time with us. But I want you to hear what he said and don't miss it. If you only listen to the Quran, it is not haram to have sex with a 5-year-old. Let's keep going.
And in fact, if you look just at the Quran, you will get the indication that you can have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. And I'll tell you why. And I'll give it.
If you look just at the Quran, you will get the indication that you can have sex with a 5-year-old. Mohamed Hijab says, if you read just the Quran, you will get the indication that you can have sex with a 5-year-old.
Hold on. I'm saying this and I'm going to back it up with evidences. Let me repeat my point. We both agree that it's haram and it's wrong to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. Okay, good. My premise today, my thesis today is as follows. The reason why it's haram to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old is not found in the Quran at all, but is in fact found in the Sunnah.
I want to drive it home again. The fact that you cannot, according to Mohamed Hijab, one of the most respected modern scholars of Islam, according to him, you cannot find anything in the Quran. What Sajid has been telling y'all for the longest is that you cannot find anything in the Quran, I'm not going to say it, but you cannot find anything in the Quran that says that you cannot have sex with a 5-year-old.
Okay, and listen, if you just read the Quran, it is halal, it would be halal to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. Tell me how and why. In Surah Al-Talaq, chapter 65, verse 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us.
Sajid, what's that verse you've been reading? For all this time? You there?
I'm 65-4, and Mohamed Hijab is using the age 5 as an excuse, like as an example, right? He's saying you could potentially have, intercourse with a 5-year-old. He's using that as an example, right? But if you go based on Quran, it doesn't give you an age. It doesn't give you an age at all. And that's his point, right? So what he's trying to do is push his narrative that you can't be a Quran only Muslim because you need the Sunnah to also teach you how to be with your young wives who haven't menstruated yet. And we'll get to that later. But this verse that he's talking about is 65:4, and he's actually about to pull it up and break down the Arabic. So that's important too.
But the verse that Sajid has been reading to tell you that the Quran allows child marriage is the verse that Mohamed Hijab is about to read to say that the Quran alone would give you the illusion, as he puts it. We're going to keep going. You tell me when you get ready to come up and refute Mohamed Hijab.
Who you can divorce and who you cannot divorce. And then he says, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ. وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ. And the ones who had never been pubescent before.
Okay, what was that? Surah 16?
Surah Talaq, chapter 65, verse 4. وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنِ. Now the word lam in Arabic, it's what you call harfu nahi lil madi, which means that it's something, a negative term for the past tense. The Mufassirun, they say about this term, about this verse, it talks about breastfeeding women, because when you're breastfeeding you obviously can't menstruate. And it also talks about pregnant women, obviously you don't menstruate.
Okay,
However, at the same time,
verse 4.
yeah.
It doesn't say anything about that.
Yes, it does. I'm just.
No. Okay, let me read it out for non-speaking Arabs here. Surah 65 verse 4. As for the women who have reached menopause,
yes.
If you have any doubts, the interim shall be 3 months.
Yeah.
As for those whose menstruation has ceased,
okay, good.
Those who are
this
already
is it. Good.
The interim is until they give birth.
This is the verse.
Anyone who reverence Allah, He makes His matters
ولا
easy
يئسن
for
من
him.
المحيض من نسائكم
So where does Allah
فعدتهن 3 أشهر واللائي لم يحد. واللائي لم يحد.
There's a verse in the Quran where Allah says that
No,
you
listen,
choose your
but
partner.
you're with me here.
You
I
should
just
marry
can't.
a woman.
But I'm with you. What's your name again, bro?
Cameron.
Sorry again?
Cameron.
Cameron. Do you mind if I just, because to other people they might not know what I'm trying to say. So what? Let me just finish what I'm saying and then you can come back. In the Sunnah, there's a hadith. And by the way, this is very important, yeah? I want all Muslims to be aware of this. The reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds or whatever is not because of puberty.
Hold
up.
Mohamed Hijab wants all Muslims to know that the reason that we don't have sex, exactly, stop with me, you know what the child is. The reason why we don't have sex with children is not because of puberty, as you did, Mohamed Hijab, not me. The reason is not puberty. So the argument you've been telling us all this time was puberty. Mohamed Hijab's argument here, and I'm sure you'll just tell me you don't accept him because you won't even accept Ibn Kathir. But it doesn't matter. You won't even accept the other guy. I forget his name, Bukhari. But anyways, Mohamed Hijab says here the reason why we do not have sex with girls is not puberty. What is it, Mohamed Hijab? Let's see what it is.
Wait a minute, what did you say? It's not because of puberty, because that verse in the Quran actually says lam yahid. They never had puberty before. You can't go around that. The reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with those people.
You can't go around that.
You can't go around that. They want to sit up here and act like this is some medical issue. I mean, they know Muhammad didn't know about no damn medical issue. What the hell?
And then they want to demonize me for saying exactly what Mohamed Hijab is saying. Make it make sense.
You can't listen to let's just a little bit. I just want to go back a little bit. I just want y'all to hear it. Okay, let's go back to maybe like 3. Should be like 3. Let's go back like 306 something. Just listen again.
Actually says lam yahid. They never had puberty before. You can't go around that.
Even today, do I think it's absolutely abhorrent for a 16-year-old to get married? No. If a 16-year-old is married to an 18-year-old, or a 16-year-old is married to a 17-year-old, do I think it's absolutely abhorrent for a 17-year-old to marry a 57-year-old? Yes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the time. It was never okay for grown men to be mounting little girls, bro. That was never okay. Definitely not by someone who you call a prophet. But let's keep going.
Intercourse with those people is because of harm. The hadith says la darar wa la dirar. And I've said before, the reason why is because of the sunnah, not because of the Quran. Such a la darar means you can't inflict harm to anyone else. You know, I'm going to make a point to you today and to the British government. Wait a minute, what did you say? British government? Yes, the British government. I believe that the way they formalize the age of consent is flawed. Let me tell you why. And I'll come back. No, but wallahi, let me come to you. Let me come to you. I'm with you. Cameron, give me a second, please. I beg you, yeah? You know, in Islam, it's haram to have sexual intercourse with anyone who you'll cause harm to. That's why we don't have a problem with the age of consent, let's say, yeah? In this country, a 30-year-old man can have sexual intercourse with a centenarian, a 100-year-old woman. But I'm going to be explicit here, Cameron, yeah? If a 30-year-old man has sexual intercourse with a 100-year-old woman, it's going to cause physical harm and psychological harm. The same two things, which is the reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds.
So the reason why you don't have sex with 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and 10-year-olds is not because it's just morally abhorrent to have sex with children. It's just because you'll cause harm. Ergo, giving way to the argument that what? If you can prove that it will cause no harm to an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, if you could prove that you could cause no harm mentally, as he would say, I don't even think it's mental, I think it's just physical, but he says mental. So if you could prove that you won't cause any mental and or physical harm to an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, according to she, a 9-year-old, if you can prove that you will cause no harm, then would it not be halal for you to engage in intercourse with her? Let's keep watching.
In this country. So if that's the case, they should make it illegal for a 30-year-old to have sex with a 100-year-old, just as they made it illegal for under 16s to be having sexual intercourse with over 16s. Now the point is this, Islam, why does it stop certain marriages from taking place? It only stops it on the basis of harm. And that is a case-by-case reality. If somebody...
Whoop! Islam only stops marriages on the base of harm, and that is subjective.
On a case-by-case basis, he says. That's just crazy.
So Islam only stops marriage. I'm repeating what he said. Islam only stops marriage on the case of harm, and it's a case-by-case basis.
So we could bring them Mohamed Hijab in the same story. We can bring in Tamiya and Katir and all the classical scholars, the same story, right? And I think the point is being missed because what they're doing is defending themselves, right? They're trying to prove to us that they are not this way, and we are not saying that you are, right? Again, for the millionth time, this comes down to God. Why would God put such a confusing verse about little girls in a holy book? Number one. Number two, if the Sunnah is what Muslims are supposed to follow alongside of the Quran, well, the Sunnah states that Muhammad married a girl when she was 6 and consummated when she was 9, because that's the age that she was able to take, the sexual intercourse. So this is the exact reason why so many little girls are married off all over the Islamic world. God, you guys are taking this way too personally, and you're defending yourselves. We're not saying that you would do this. What we are is, God says that you can do it in the Quran. And my biggest question is, why would God put a verse about prepubescent girls and divorce and marriage in a holy book? There's nothing holy about marrying a little girl in any way, shape, or form. Did you guys hear that? Can you hear me? No, you can't.
Let's keep going.
For example, as I've just mentioned, is 30 years old and he's having sexual intercourse with a woman that's 100 years old who's got a hip replacement surgery. That's actually haram. That marriage should not be allowed to take place in Islam. I would actually urge the British government to take this Islamic principle on board, because actually exploitation, both physical and psychological, can take place.
Hence is my issue. Do you see how he just spun that shit? Did you see how he just spun that shit? He just said, listen, British government, you should adopt the Islamic principles on marriage, because you really don't want little old 100-year-old grandma to get a hip broke. Yeah, he didn't tell you to side. Well, little Susie, who 13 years old, is getting married to motherfucking 54-year-old Mr. Ibn Happy Face. You understand? So henceforth is my issue. Henceforth is why I have such an issue. Because you tell me one half, yeah, okay, sounds pretty good if you say, yeah, maybe we shouldn't let 100-year-old, maybe we shouldn't let them have sex, because that is a bit, that's strange. Maybe you're right. Maybe we shouldn't allow that. But they don't tell you the other half, Like the video I can show you that I showed on TikTok yesterday of the little 13-year-old married to a 30-year-old dude based on the same principles of do no harm. You only got half of the puzzle. The half that sounds good.
If a 30-year-old man, fully vitalized, has sexual intercourse with a 100-year-old woman. Now the point is this. The Quran doesn't say anywhere in the Quran that the woman has to be pubescent. Why? Because you can have a 16-year-old, it's possible. You can have a 16-year-old prepubescent, it's possible. You can, in Islam 15 is the max. But in this country, 16, it's conceivable to find a 16-year-old woman who's, for example, hasn't menstruated yet. It is conceivable, although it's very unlikely, right? The point is this. In the Islamic discourse, the reason why it's haram to have sexual intercourse with categories of people, whether it be a 100-year-old woman if you're 30, or a 5-year-old...
What's up, brother?
I got a question for Thomas. Thomas said parents' consent is another condition. So I have a question for you, Thomas. If you were during your prophet's time, peace be upon him, would you give your 9-year-old daughter to him? I'm just curious. I want you to answer me. Would you consent to giving your 9-year-old daughter to him? To giving Aisha, CPS be upon her? I'm asking you a question. Don't run from my question. If you were during the time of your prophet, would you give your 9-year-old daughter to Muhammad? Yes or no?
What did you say? It's not because of puberty, because that verse in the Quran actually says lam yahid. They never had puberty before. You can't go around that.
Bro, I want you to answer the question. It's okay, Thomas. I know you don't want to answer because I would hope the answer would be no. I don't understand why you don't answer though, Thomas. I asked you a simple question. If you were during the time of your prophet Muhammad, right, would you give your 9-year-old daughter to Muhammad to marry?
I want to make a point right here what Mr. Flynn said too. Mr. Flynn said it's worse that they went back afterwards and wrote it into text from what I gather. Exactly. I want you to explain. People need to understand why this verse, why they say this verse came down, so-called came down, right? This verse came down because they came and asked the question. So God, according to them, God was asked the question, hey man, what about the menopause women and them little girls that ain't had their period yet? Yeah, just 3 months for them too. That's nuts that the question was asked. And then this is the answer in which was given. No. Just stay away from the kids. If it was during a time when men lived to be the average age of 40, the question next, but no, it doesn't. Because still now, let's say we just divide everything in half. Even though the average age of life now isn't 80, let's just divide everything in half. I still would think it's weird. It's very, very strange. Even today, let's double everything. Let's divide the men's age in half. Men live longer, women. Cool. Let's say 18. 18 and in today's terms, 80. That would still be very strange. Let's go back double age. 14 and 70 would still be strange.
So this is where the issue is coming, right? When they defend when they're trying to defend this verse, they're coming from a place where they're trying to prove that they are not this way, right? But we know that already, right? Like, I used to be a Muslim. I grew up in a Muslim community. Why am I finding out about this now? Because there were never red flags in my community. I live in the West. There were never red flags. I never had to do my research to find this truth in the book. It all comes down to God, right? God. Why would God put such a confusing verse in a holy book about little girls? And if it was just about that time, why is it in a book that is supposedly supposed to be timeless and for everyone, right? And then they like to use the Arabic as an excuse. Well, if that's the case and people are not able to translate the Quran into English and study it, then maybe this religion is just for the Arabs and just for that time, right? Because your arguments literally refute everything you say about Islam, that it's for everyone and it's timeless, when you debate in the manner that you are debating. We are not attacking you, nor are we attacking Islam. Again, this comes down to God. Why would God put a verse about marrying and divorcing prepubescent little girls in a supposedly book that's holy and came down from the heavens? This shouldn't even been in there. And then why so confusing? And then that argument that it refers to women who have hormonal issues. This is what I was led to believe as well, until I further, until I delved into all the scholars and the research and did my reading and found out, no, there are a few scholars out there who do in fact add, you know, hormonal illnesses and imbalances to their tafsir, but they still haven't removed it to be about prepubescent girls. They just added the illnesses and hormonal imbalances to it, right? So, um, like Mohamed Hijab said, there's no way around it. Meaning, if you were to just take the Quran only and read it, it is speaking about prepubescent girls, and there's no way around it. And that's literally what I have been saying, and the reason why I'm being demonized right now.
So this is what I like to bring up right here, man. People are, 1890, the age of consent. In the U.S. in 1890, the average age of marriage for a woman was 22, for a man it was 26, a 4-year gap. Now that gap does shrink a little. It shrinks a little because men start getting married younger, and then right here it takes a drop. This is like World War II, right? And then now it goes up, but the age gap stays relatively the same. The gap stays relatively the same. It's not our point that people at some point didn't get married younger. The point is that the gap, you can go back at any point in history, the average gap was always the average gap. It was never a situation where the normal thing to do was for a grown man to marry little girls. That was never normal, no matter what the possible age range was. Also, your fallacy about the people living until 40 is a fallacy. The reason why the age gap seems or looks seems as if it's so, I mean, sorry, the average age seems as if it's so low in those times was because of infant mortality in a lot of cases. Infant mortality. So when you have to average in all those kids who died at 1 day and 2 days old, well, then it drags everybody's age down, average age down. But if you look at the people who make it past, who make it to, 7, 8 years old and how long they lived, take your so-called prophet example. I think he died when he was 63. It's not that big of a difference now. People die now, what, 75, 80? So it's not as if it was like people were dying when they was 27 or some shit.
And then also, right, again with my point, they're using like what governments or what people used to do to refute what the Quran is saying, because we're not saying this, the Quran is saying this, right? Again, which brings me back to God. Like, God, if you're looking for the truth, if you're looking for a way of life that aligns with what the one true God wants, right? Why are you bringing up what humans and governments are doing when we're speaking about God? Whatever the age of consent or marriage was and is in every country in the world, okay, it doesn't matter unless they're claiming it to be from God. This isn't about your feelings. This isn't about my feelings. This is about God and the United States of America, or the UK or Australia or any of these other countries that you guys like to bring up in your debates, does not claim God when they're setting age of consent. They're not using the Torah or the Bible to set that age of consent. Okay? Again, this has everything to do with God. Why is God putting such a confusing verse about prepubescent? And it's not confusing. You guys choose to make it confusing, but it's there, like Muhammad Hijab said. There's no way around it. It says it's speaking about prepubescent little girls, like girls who have not menstruated yet. And when you go study the Asbab and Nuzul, which is the history of why these verses came, right? It's because the people around the Prophet Muhammad that were following him were asking him questions about the idda period for the women who are not getting menstrual cycles, like the women who are pregnant, like the women who are going through menopause, and the women who have not gotten their periods yet. And the reason why they're referred to as women in the Quran is nisaikum, which means you're females. So these prepubescent girls have already been married to these men, and they're questioning how to divorce them and what the waiting period is. So to them, these prepubescent girls, little girls, are their nisaikum, their females, their wives, their property.
Hey, you see that guy Thomas? He wants to come up. Send the link. He said.
All right, cool.